Welcome to the Wealth Research Group weekly Titans of Industry interview. This is our opportunity to gain incredible insights and get exposed to vital information. We couldn't ask for more as a student investors than to get a behind the scenes view of what the top investors in the world are thinking. These interviews are the best school anyone can participate in. Every week we assemble a list of serious questions for our guests and ask them to be brutally honest with us. Now today I'm extremely honored because this person came to Wall Street in 1968 after growing up in tiny Demopolis, Alabama with $600 in his pocket, and by 1980, a mere 12 years later, he left Wall Street with more money than one could spend a lifetime. And I admire a man who knows that once you reach a certain level of riches, there's a whole new life ahead of you to enjoy. So he toured the world, first on his motorbike, and second time with his wife on a specialty built hybrid Mercedes-Benz car, and ended up in the Guinness Book of Records twice because of these journeys. As a fund manager with the Quantum Fund, he managed to gain roughly 4,200% in a single decade, while the S&P 500 gained 47% in the same period of time. I'm honored to be speaking today with Mr. Jim Rogers. Sir, how are you today?
Oh, I'm delighted to be here. Sounds like fun.
Okay, excellent. Let's jump right into this. I have some big questions to throw at you, and my biggest one is concerning the U.S. baby boomer generation. With 80 million Americans retiring in the next 2 decades, and with the entitlements they have been promised, and the inability of the tax receipts to fund these insane obligations, are we in for a prolonged period of economic contraction?
Well, the numbers you just said speak for themselves. There's no way that America can meet its obligations. America is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world, and the debts go up daily, whether you're talking about for pension plans or medical care or just debt, interest on debt, you name it, and our debts go up higher and higher. Do the arithmetic. I don't want to sound like some fearmonger or something. Just do the arithmetic. You can add as easily as I can. Yeah. Anybody can add as easy as I can, and especially if you're somebody under 75, you better add.
Yeah, these numbers are very, very scary. How do you see the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and many other fast-growing countries in the developing world, with their large appetite to enjoy better living and growing middle classes, and their young demographics taking the place of the U.S. as the centers of economic power in the world during the next few decades?
Well, anybody who has read any history, even a little history, knows that throughout history, countries that get themselves into the situation that we are in, America's in, we're the largest debtor nation in the world and getting worse. We enter crises, we have crises, and we have semi-crises, and we go into decline. I don't think there's any question that America is certainly in relative decline, if not absolute decline. Look out the window, read the newspapers, watch TV. You know what's happening as well as I do, and it's always happened that way, always, and it's happening again. Somebody invariably rises to replace the declining nation. Sometimes it takes a war, but it's always happened. The countries you mentioned, and as far as I can see, China is certainly going to be the most important country in the 21st century. They will have problems too. Anybody who rises has problems. But the 21st century is the century of China, whether we like it or not.
That's very interesting. Turning to precious metals for a minute, I'm seeing negative interest rates as the main force driving the prices of metals higher, and I also see a lot of challenges for insurance companies, banks, pension funds, and just any institutions that for decades have been counting on bonds to generate yields and profits to stay afloat. How severe is negative interest rates to the overall economy? And conversely, how bullish is it to sound money, to real money, gold and silver?
How severe is it? It's a disaster. These guys are ruining the people who save and invest. Everybody listening to this, their parents taught them, save your money, invest for the future, and you will come out okay. Well, many people do that. Many people have done it, and many others do it. all of them are being wiped out now, unfortunately. If you're a pension plan or an insurance company or an endowment or a trust or whatever, most are being wiped out now because they're earning no return on their money, even though they have saved and invested prudently for the future. It's a disaster for just about everybody. It's being done at the expense of the people who didn't save, who went and recklessly borrowed a lot of money or spent money on foolish things. These guys, the central banks, are trying to bail out the people who shouldn't be bailed out at the expense of the people who, when you lose your saving and investing group in society, you usually wind up with serious, serious problems. History shows it. Don't listen to me. Just read some history and you will see. And that is what's happening now. This is a disaster for many people, even when and by the way, when interest rates go higher, as they will someday, you're going to find a lot of the people in the meantime, it's not going to save them. It's not going to save the state of Illinois. It's not going to save the state of New Jersey or California. Higher interest rates are going to be devastating for all the debtors that these incompetents in the central banks are trying to save. No, we got a serious, serious crisis ahead of us.
A lose-lose situation. Jim, you've seen more of the world than most see on TV, and you've been able to experience many amazing things in your life. There are many people listening to this show who are looking to plant their flags in an industry that offers them both excitement and a bright future. Where do you see the most opportunity for people right now?
Well, first of all, nobody should listen to me. They should only find excitement in what they themselves love and their own passions. Don't listen to somebody on the internet or on TV or in the newspaper. Figure out what you love, and then do it. No matter how many people. In fact, the more people who laugh at you, the better, usually. So figure out your passions and do it. Now, when I went to Wall Street, for instance, it was a backwater. It was a disaster. Fortunately, I didn't know that. Nobody told me to stay away. If they told me, I might not have done it. But since I didn't know it, I went to Wall Street because I loved it. Only because I loved it. And it was great for everybody, at least for me and for the people where I worked. So you should figure out what you love. Some things that I see in the future that are great. I'm very bullish on agriculture. I'm very bullish on, China's a very polluted nation. Anybody who can clean up China is going to make a fortune. Asian tourism has a huge future because there's so many Asians who can travel now and are able to travel. They've not been able to travel for decades. Now they can. So there's some industries of the world that have a magnificent future. But don't do it. If you don't like being out in the sun, you shouldn't think about agriculture at all.
That's very interesting about tourism in Asia. I'm very excited about these opportunities. Jim, do you feel that the policymakers of the global economy are really just postponing the inevitable, and that sooner rather than later there would have to be a crisis resulting from this fiat currency system being pushed to its limits with QE, bailouts, the negative interest rates, all these wacky methods central banks are coming up with to try and make this dying system basically live a little longer?
Well, there's no question. Like I said, America's the largest debtor nation in the world, and it's getting higher and higher. We're not the only ones, though. Great Britain essentially is bankrupt. Many countries in Europe are essentially bankrupt now. A lot of people have been printing money to try to prop the system up and raising debt. The idea that the solution to too much debt is more debt, it's staggering to me that grown-ups can say something like that, but you see it every day. People are saying, yeah, we'll just borrow more money and everything will be okay. No, we're going to have a major crisis. You call it fiat money. It doesn't matter what it's called or why. The situation is that many countries, look at most of the European countries, they are insolvent. They're essentially insolvent. Look at many of the U.S. states. Look at the U.S. government. Japan essentially, I don't know how they're ever going to survive. They've got a declining population, huge internal debt, and debt going higher and higher. So much of the world right now has got a future that cannot be paid off unless you totally just print. I mean, yeah, we'll all get paid off. We get paid off in worthless dollars someday. That may be the answer. That's often the answer. You know, when the Soviet Union collapsed, everybody got paid, but they got paid in worthless rubles. It didn't do you any good to get paid because you were broke. Well, that's often the way things are resolved.
You get paid in nominal fiat currency, but not in purchasing power. I understand. How does one prepare to position himself in light of this situation?
Well, again, people should only do what they know about it. You should not listen to me or somebody else. If I said buy X and you know nothing about X, you should not think about investing in X. Stay with what you know. I mean, I am shorting stocks in the U.S. I'm short junk bonds. I'm long China. I own some Russian investments. I'm long agriculture. These are things I'm doing. I own some gold and silver, although I'm not buying now. These are some of the things I'm doing. But please, if you can't find Russia on a map, or you can't spell China, please, for goodness sakes, don't think about it. Don't think about investing in places like that. If you don't know what selling short is, under no circumstances should you go and sell short until you know what you're doing.
Stay within your circle of competence. I understand that exactly. I don't know if you heard the story, but the Olympics have brought to the surface the story of Julius Yego, and he's a Kenyan javelin thrower who went to internet cafes throughout his childhood and taught himself the techniques of the world champions by watching them online. And he became world champion last year in Beijing without ever having a personal coach. He just advanced to the Olympic finals a few hours ago. What role do you think this internet revolution and technology and connectivity now allow people from all around the globe to access information? How does this affect the future? Will investors use this information, do you think, to keep themselves away from being dictated by fear and greed because there's so much information available? Or do you think it will be just the same old succumbing to emotions?
Well, no, the internet, everything you know or think you know is probably wrong right now. But that's always been the case. History's always changing, which is very dramatic for all of us. Pick any year in history, 1900. And then everything that people thought was correct in 1900 was not correct 15 years later. Pick any year, 1950. You pick the year, and the world dramatically changes over the next 15 or 20 years. It's always happened that way and always will. Now, the internet, of course, makes many things happen faster. You just mentioned an astonishing story. There can be many like that. It's changing everything. My children will probably never go to a bank when they're adults. They'll probably never go to a post office. They may rarely go to a doctor. There's no need to. You can do it all on the internet now, just as you well know. Who knows? I mean, I go to hotels, and it may all be B2B somehow. There are many, many things that are changing, as we know. You don't have to go to school to learn Spanish anymore. You can do it all on the internet. You can learn physics on the internet. You can learn anything on just about anything on the internet, including throw a javelin, apparently. So everything that you have in your mind is probably wrong right now, especially if you look at the internet.
That's an amazing way to look at it. I mean, Albert Einstein said that 95% of the people are wrong 95% of the time. And I guess that's what you're saying in other words. Lastly, do you fear any major wars because of these epic changes?
Well, throughout history, when you've had a stagnant major power, the dominant power has stagnated and started declining or corroding from within, and you've had a rising power, it has nearly always led to war. Again, this is simple history. Some studies show, and I have not checked these, but some studies show that whenever there are shortages of raw materials developing, that usually has led to war too. And we have shortages of many raw materials developing now. So history would indicate, and circumstances would indicate, that there's going to be war. Unfortunately, we've always had war, and unfortunately, very few, if any, wars can be justified by most people. So, yes, we're going to have war. Yes, it's going to cause massive destruction of people, assets, capital, and everything else. Yes, it will be a waste of time, energy, money, life, and everything else. But yes, it's going to happen. My advice is, one of the things I've written some books, and one of the things that I advise my children in the books is, when the war comes to your country, get out, because they're going to be nothing but lies. I'm not the first to point out that whenever war comes, the first casualty of war is truth, because governments start lying. And the great poets of, in fact, a Nobel Prize-winning poet put on his son's grave, when he was killed in the First World War, ask them why we died. When you ask them why they died, tell them it's because our fathers lied. That's always the case. It's always the case. So I've told my children, when the war comes, if they happen to be in a country in the war, get out. Go somewhere else, because nothing good ever comes of war except there's always destruction, bankruptcy, disaster. Just get out and let the people who are foolish enough to be in the war, let them destroy each other. You get out and survive.
That's some powerful, powerful insights. Jim, this past week I've read A Gift to My Children and Adventure Capitalist myself, 2 of the 6 amazing books you wrote. I bought them on Kindle, and I think everyone should take advantage of this world-class education for the price of a small lunch if you're serious about generating stock market wealth. I want to thank you a lot for spending time with us, and to wish you all the best, sir. We've learned a lot from you. Thank you very much.
Well done. Let's do it again sometime. Thank you.
This interview with Mr. Jim Rogers has been straight and to the point. Jim doesn't pull any punches and gives you the honest truth, no matter how politically incorrect. We asked Jim his opinion on the unfunded liabilities the US faces, and he said it can only be paid by hyperinflation, basically. If you're concerned, as I am, about this, educate yourself with our Uncharted Waters special report that deals specifically with this topic. Regarding the rise of Asia, Jim is a China bull, and he believes it will soon become the empire of the day. This would be catastrophic for everyday Americans and for the US dollar. And I can only suggest you read how I position myself with my portfolio for these uncertain times that we're going through. It's right below on your screen. Jim went on to say negative interest rates are a mess and could ignite problems and present an opportunity in hard assets. This is my favorite topic, and I specifically published the Steroid Stocks Manual for capitalizing on the explosive potential of these assets and mining shares. Jim is a big believer in agriculture. He's probably the greatest agricultural investors alive. He also believes clean energy initiatives in China are a huge opportunity. I took his advice to heart and researched this topic thoroughly, and realized that there are 2 main assets that could be the tickets to ride this wave. I just finished writing this report, and it's called Monster of Commodities, 21st Century China. It's a must read. It's right down below. Jim also says it's crucial to educate yourself because of dramatic changes in the world. And my suggestion, obviously, is that you test drive our free newsletter. It's called 365 Wealth Letter. Our mission is to help you strengthen your financial fortress daily. Just sign up on the website. It's pretty easy. It's straightforward. And we'd love to help you with making sure that you are on top of things. Regarding the internet revolution, Jim is very optimistic. He says you can learn anything online today, and this would be a good time to mention that we publish a variety of valuable content on our YouTube, Facebook, G+, and Twitter channels. You might consider just following us for timely updates on what's going on in the economy. You are already taking a big step by listening to these interviews. By doing that, you're staying ahead of 99% of investors who are simply baffled by today's economic conditions. We invite you to keep tuning in every week as we poke the brains of truly the legends of our day and learn how to become better investors and better human beings. Thank you for watching. Right into this, I have some big questions to throw at you, and my biggest one is concerning the US baby boomer generation. With 80 million Americans retiring in the next 2 decades, and with the entitlements they have been promised and the inability of the tax receipts to fund these insane obligations, are we in for a prolonged period of economic and ended up in the Guinness Book of Records twice because of these journeys? As a fund manager with the Quantum Fund, he managed to gain roughly 4,200% in a single decade, while the S&P 500 gained 47% in the same period of time. I'm honored to be speaking today with Mr. Jim Rogers. Sir, how are you today?
Oh, I'm delighted to be here. Sounds like fun.
Okay, excellent. Let's show. He left Wall Street with more money than one could spend in a lifetime, and I admire a man who knows that once you reach a certain level of riches, there's a whole new life ahead of you to enjoy. So he toured the world, first on his motorbike, and second time with his wife on a specialty built hybrid Mercedes-Benz car. These interviews are the best school anyone can participate in. Every week we assemble a list of serious questions for our guests and ask them to be brutally honest with us. Now today I'm extremely honored because this person came to Wall Street in 1968 after growing up in tiny Demopolis, Alabama, with $600 in his pocket, and by 1980, a mere 12 years later, Welcome to the Wealth Research Group weekly Titans of Industry interview. This is our opportunity to gain incredible insights and get exposed to vital information. We couldn't ask for more as a student investors than to get a behind the scenes view of what the top investors in the world are thinking.